a murderer has created a media firestorm.
I'm innocent. I want to not to harm nobody.
Take a stand! Don't imprison an innocent man!
When it comes to murder cases, they're never fun to talk about, because there's nothing fun about murder. And most times, people hope that when a murder case happens, it's solved in a way where the right person gets put behind bars and no miscarriage of justice is done. But in some cases, like the one involving Stephen Avery, the question of miscarriage of justice is asked quite a bit, because between the actual trial, the events after it, and a certain Netflix documentary, the questions about what happened in that case continue to be asked. So allow us to show you Stephen Avery making a murderer. Was he innocent? Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The early life of Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery was born in 1962 in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, to Alan and Dolores Avery. Since 1965, his family has operated a salvage yard in rural Gibson, Wisconsin, on the 40-acre property where they lived outside town. Avery has 3 siblings, Chuck, Earl, and Barb. He attended public schools in nearby Mishicot and Manitowoc, where his mother said he went to an elementary school for slower kids. According to one of his lawyers in 1985, school records showed that his intelligence quotient was 70, and that he barely functioned in school. On July 24, 1982, Avery married Lori Mathiasen, who was a single mother. They have 4 children together, Rachel, Jenny, and twins Stephen and Will. On the surface, this seems like a regular guy in life who simply has some issues with his mind. But as his life went on, it was clear that there were some things wrong with him. But whether that led to him being what people accused him of being or not is another story. Early troubles with the law. It's fair to say that Avery was not the greatest person on earth, as he did have trouble with the law from time to time, specifically in the 80s. His first offense was going and robbing a store with a friend, and that got him 10 months in jail. Then he apparently killed his cat alongside some friends, and that led him to going back to jail for animal cruelty, something no one likes to see go unpunished. 1985 proved to be one of the worst years of his life, as apparently his cousin was spreading very unflattering rumors about him, and he ran her off the road and pointed an unloaded gun at her to get her to stop doing that. He was sentenced to 6 years for that crime. But also in 1985, he was accused of something that he would later be proven innocent for after 18 years. The false arrest. In July of 1985, a woman named Penny Beertson was assaulted and violated while on a jog one day. During a photo lineup, she said it was Avery who was the attacker. You'd think that this would be a pretty definitive statement, as she was the one assaulted and thus would know the face of her attacker. But in this case, that wasn't true. Avery was 40 miles away in Green Bay shortly after the attack, an alibi supported by a time-stamped store receipt and 16 eyewitnesses. One eyewitness can be swayed, but a group of them and a time-stamped receipt proving he wasn't anywhere close to the attack? That proves he didn't do it. Except he was arrested and charged with the crime, getting 32 years in jail for it. What's worse is that 2 different appeal attempts were denied in subsequent years. In 1995, a detective made a call to the jail that Avery was at and noted that an inmate had admitted committing an assault years ago in Manitowoc County and that someone else was in jail for it. The sheriff at the jail didn't believe him, and thus Avery remained in jail. As for his release, that came in 2002 when the Innocent Project used DNA evidence to prove that Avery was innocent and that a man named Gregory Allen had done the deed. What's important to note here is that Allen and Avery honestly did look alike. After being released, he sued many of the people responsible for his wrongful conviction and got $400,000 in restitutions. The problem? He wasn't going to be free for long. TERESA HALLBACH. TERESA HALLBACH was a simple photographer born in 1980. 25 years later, in early November, she went missing, and her parents called into the police to let them know that their daughter was missing. Now, lest you think that her parents were just overreacting, they hadn't seen their daughter in days, and she lived right next door to them. So if anyone would notice that she was gone, it would have been her parents. HALLBACH was known to have visited the Avery salvage yard in Manitowoc County on October 31st, 2005, days before her death. On November 10th, 2005, following the discovery of her Toyota RAV4 vehicle partially concealed on the Avery property, Calumet County Sheriff Jerry Pagel conducted a search and found the charred remains of HALLBACH. Her cell phone, license plates, and car key were also recovered. Fast forward a few days, and Stephen Avery's blood was found in her vehicle, a clear sign that he was involved in part or in whole with what happened to her. Avery was charged with the kidnapping and murder of HALLBACH, mutilation of a corpse, and illegal possession of a firearm. The immediate controversy of the case. Almost from the get-go, there were issues with the case, not the least of which was that some of the county sheriffs and law enforcement who were involved in proving Avery guilty of the previous crime were allowed to investigate the new case despite there being a civil suit by Avery against them, and some of the key evidence was indeed found by them. But as Avery's lawyers noted multiple times, not only was there a conflict of interest, there was evidence that was clearly tampered with, including a vial of Avery's blood from his wrongful conviction that had been unsealed, and a puncture wound was in the top as if to draw blood from the vial. Avery himself noted that this was a frame-up because of his suing the county for what they did to him. Another controversy that came about was that of his nephew, Brendan Ray Dassey, who confessed to helping Avery with the attack on TERESA. But later he recanted, as he said he was coerced by the cops as they didn't let him have a lawyer present. The trial and verdict. On March 18, 2007, Avery was found guilty of first-degree murder and illegal possession of a firearm and was sentenced to life in prison, as well as not getting the possibility of parole. So you'd think that right then and there, this would be over, and that nothing left was to be done, right? Wrong, because one show was about to change everything: Making a Murderer. In January 2016, after Making a Murderer had been released on Netflix, People magazine reported that one of the Avery trial jurors was the father of a Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputy, and another juror's wife was a clerk with Manitowoc County. That's a clear violation of jury code, as no one connected to this case through family or job should have been allowed into the jury, and yet multiple ones were. Juror Richard Mahler, who was accused from the trial after the jury had begun deliberations because of a family emergency, later commented that early on, 7 of the jurors had voted not guilty. He was mystified that the jury eventually agreed on a guilty verdict. Mahler's account has been disputed by other jury members, who claimed that no early vote had taken place, and that an informal vote was taken, with only 3 jury members voting Avery not guilty. Another juror allegedly told the Making a Murderer filmmakers of feeling intimidated into returning a guilty verdict, fearing for personal safety. The filmmaker's claims have also been disputed. The appeals. Naturally still maintaining his innocence, Stephen Avery made numerous attempts to go and get his freedom back. Many of them were denied, including one in 2017 which cited that there was clear corruption and falsified evidence going on that led to Avery's conviction, and that a new trial needed to be held. It was denied without even looking at the potential new evidence. His current lawyer continues to fight for him, and is trying hard to get a new trial based on new evidence found. Is he innocent? So, after all of that, let's ask the question: is Stephen Avery innocent? To say a definitive no would absolutely fly in the face of all that has been noted in the case so far. There was clearly some shady things going on in the investigation on both the officer and prosecution side, and that was proven via what happened with Dassey. As for Avery, it's hard to say that he definitively did it, because he was wrongly convicted before, after everyone was sure it was him. Could lightning have struck twice? Weirder things have happened in our world. So, what do you think? What do you think of this look at Stephen Avery and how this case went? And why he might honestly be innocent? Do you think that the officers and prosecution used illegal methods to make him and his nephew seem guilty? If so, do you hope people keep fighting for them so that they can be freed? Or do you think that Netflix just threw up a lot of shade on a case that was 100% accurate and fair in its outcome? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.